Okay.
All right, go ahead, Erin.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today's iAM Online, the monthly webinar focused on identity and access management. iAM Online is brought to you by InCommon and Internet 2. So we're going to be taking questions and comments from all the participants here today using the Zoom chat function. So please send those messages during the presentation and we'll answer as we go along. You'll find the chat button along the bottom of the Zoom screen, but you do have to click the button to see the chat. Also, you'll see that the default for sending a chat message is to send it only to the presenters. So please choose that drop-down menu and select the option that will send it to everyone so we can make sure everybody catches those questions. So today's session will tell the story of how 3 very different organizations leveraged one solution, which is the Collaboration Success Program, to help them to make headway on recent projects and roadmaps. So again, I wanted to welcome, we have 3 panelists joining us today. I'm super excited to have them. I like to call them the iAM Super Trio. We have Keith Wessel from Illinois Urbana-Champaign, Lacey Vickery from UNC Charlotte, and Tommy Doan from SMU. All of these folks are certainly worthy of capes to discuss how awesome they are at participating in the Common Collaboration Success Program. And they're going to talk a little bit about how this program helped to tackle some of their challenges. Before we move right into the panel discussion, I wanted to give everybody just a little bit of a background on some information about engagement opportunities with InCommon. So InCommon offers a very broad range of engagement opportunities for the iAM community. So there's learning opportunities available for those completely new to iAM, or new to the Federation or new to any of our services. So that kind of starts off the pendulum with Basecamp, which is actually coming up in July, which is a perfect opportunity for those newer to InCommon and Internet or iAM or both. And then we have opportunities that span for anyone who has some experience, but maybe want to get some software training, or people who are so advanced in the community and they're ready to give back. So although we have all these different options, today we're going to focus a little bit more on the Collaboration Success Program, or the CSP, which is a planning and implementation support program. So you're going to hear the word community a lot, no doubt, today, and it's one of our favorite words here at InCommon. So it's not just about software, certificate service, or EduRoam, or our federation. This really is about community. We want to help each other out, knowing that we're never alone going through our projects and our work. It's easier to find solutions when you're together and you're not searching alone. It's knowing that you have the resources to help overcome your iAM challenges, making new friends, believe it or not. We've all become really good friends along the way, and helping and give back to others. And so that's really what the CSP is about. It's helping folks to come together to learn, investigate solutions, prepare for this, implement them, and then to ultimately give back. So the CSP is gearing up for our 4th round later on this year. So these are just some of the highlights that you might hear a little bit about today. So I thought it might be helpful to put it out there so that everybody had a sense of what they were. Inside of this program, that it's a subscription-based program, these are the different elements that are included. So we kick off in September, we run through June. And during that time, folks engage in an iAM self-assessment. We dive in deep throughout the fall and work with you on your project planning and scoping initiatives. We host a couple of virtual workshops so you can work closely with our specialists and with one another. We have access to dedicated Slack channels. We have our community experts and implementers, and our InCommon and Internet 2 staff, and our developers, and our people who teach our classes, all in one place that you can all talk. You get access to the Basecamp content, lots of software training opportunities. Everyone who participates gets your own workbench, so you can kind of like model your plans, after you plan your model, which is hosted in AWS. And we talk a lot about DevOps, and so we'll give you the means to learn about that and start to explore. And then the most common popular item is this office hours with our developers and our experts. So you come together regularly and you have key access to get your questions answered. And of course, again, all the connections you have through alumni and through the community. So to date, we've had 22 different organizations that have participated in the CSP, from higher ed and research organizations globally, actually. And so we're preparing to kick off our 4th one. So this number is going to continue to grow. But before we keep talking about ourselves, we would like to hear a little bit more about you. So we have a couple quick polls that would be lovely if everyone out in our participant land could engage us with. So the first one, we'd like to hear a little bit about how mature you think your iAM program is. If everybody could just give us a quick rating between 1 and 5, with 5 being the most mature, that would be great. We'll give it just a few more seconds while people are voting. Looks like we're slowing down. So that's great. So it looks like we can go ahead and got the results here. So it looks like most of us are saying that we're around a 3. We're kind of in the middle of the bar. And we're not too many really new people. So that's good to know. And then a second question would be asking, what is the size of the student population that your iAM program impacts? So it's not necessarily what's the size of your students at your campus or in your system, but how many folks your iAM system impacts. And we'll give that a few seconds while people vote. Yeah, it looks like most people have voted, so we'll go ahead and share those results. It looks like we're nearly a split. It looks like we're mostly comprised of larger organizations, though, for sure. About half of us between the 10 to 25, and the rest of us in really big orgs of greater than 50. So thank you for that. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to our panelists to let them do a quick introduction, starting with Mr. Wessel.
Thank you, Erin, and super trio. Now that you've set unrealistically high expectations that we I'm Keith Wessel from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I'm on our identity access management team. I'm one of our federation guys. I am also the chair of the In-Common Technical Advisory Committee, the TAC. Since you gave us your numbers, we'll give us our numbers too. I asked my team this morning for a maturity level, and there was a little bit of debate whether we're a 3 or a 4. So they told me to tell you guys we're a 3.5. So we're farther along than we used to be, though, and that's a good thing. And we're a tier 1 research institution hovering around 50,000 students with lots and lots of research money coming in as well. So we're a bigger school. And who am I passing it to next?
Thank you. Oops, thank you very much. Okay, Lacey.
I'm Lacey Vickery from UNC Charlotte. I'm an iAM architect. I started out with working with Shibboleth, and I'm kind of doing lots of other things now, but our campus is roughly 30,000 enrolled students, and I would say probably upwards of 60,000 the total students that we manage with our iAM system. The second largest institution in the state of North Carolina system. And I didn't really know what to put for maturity level, but I'm thinking probably around a 3. We have Shibboleth and Grouper in place now, and some vendor supported products for provisioning, but kind of where we are.
Cool. Thank you, Lacey. And last but not least, Tommy.
Hello, my name is Tommy. I'm Tommy Doan from Southern Methodist University. We're in Dallas, Texas. Our campus size, our student enrollment is about 12,000. We have approximately 60,000 in our identity management system. And we have sort of assessed our maturity level at a safe number 3 of 5. So kind of in the middle, along with a lot of you.
Awesome. Thanks, Tommy. Okay, so with that, we're going to go ahead and move right into the questions for our panelists. So again, feel free to pop questions right into the Zoom chat as we're going along, and we'll be happy to answer them. So the first one, we'd love to hear a little bit why you chose to get involved with Internet 2 and In-Common. So Keith, do you want to tackle that first for us?
I will hit that one first. And for us, it's not as much why we got involved with Internet 2 and a little bit more why Internet 2 got involved with us. We're one of the first schools in the door, that famous meeting back in Chicago back in, I believe, 97. And I'm going to avoid giving a history lesson here today because that's not why we're here. But we were one of the ground floor schools with this thing that was trying to stay on top of keeping the internet from becoming totally commercialized and managing to keep research and education in the mix. So we've been in it from the beginning. We owe a lot of our in common involvement to a name that many of you are probably familiar with, Mike Grady, who was very active back when we joined Internet 2 as a member of our staff here in our department before he retired and went to Unicon. When In Common came along and they decided they're going to build this whole federated trust framework with Shibboleth on top of the Internet 2 networking framework, we were one of the first ones in the door there, again, thanks to Mike. But yeah, In Common Federation, we got that. Certificate service, we're all over that one. Eduroam, I think we used it before all the cool kids did. So we've been involved in Internet 2 and many of its programs from the beginning.
Cool, thanks.
I guess I'll go. So the for UNC Charlotte, I believe that the first sort of implementation, well, I can't speak to Eduroam. I know Eduroam has been on campus for a while, and we've been using the certificate service for a while. But as far as the TAP components, the UNC system is a cohort of 17 institutions, I think. And the UNC system office sort of mandated that all the schools have federated login for the UNC system federation. And as part of that, they handed down a VM with Shibboleth installed that schools could use. That's kind of how we learned of Shibboleth. And as we started working with it more, we realized the benefits of joining the In Common Federation in addition to the UNC system office federation. So that was kind of our first foray into In Common was via Shibboleth, I would say. I'm sure the networking people had Eduroam implemented before Shibboleth. I don't know the timeline there, but for me personally, it was Shibboleth.
Yeah, pretty similar for us. I would say that our first introduction to Internet 2 was through the camp conferences. Was very helpful to get together with other people from different universities around the nation and hear from others about shared experiences, common themes of technologies and challenges that we faced. And pretty quickly, we learned about this thing called a SAML Federation. And our libraries soon afterward approached us about an SSO need that they had. And so we adopted Shibboleth and joined the In Common Federation in around 2012, I think it was. And after that, we did get started with the Eduroam Federation as well. And so we participate in that and also the certificate services. So all of those have been themes that we have been very interested in with Internet 2. And then next was just the relationships that we started building with some of our peers. The birds of the feather conversations at conferences were very helpful in sort of forging and fostering relationships with other universities, and quickly realized how open others from perhaps even competing universities, if you could say that. We're competing for the same students in some cases, but very open environment, very welcome and willing to share experiences, especially with technologies. And we obviously have lots of interesting personalities that it was fun to spend some sort of downtime with during those conferences.
Cool, thank you. Not seeing any questions from the audience, so we'll keep on rolling here. So what led you to the Collaboration Success Program?
I'll start, Aaron, with where Tommy left off, actually, because yeah, I will echo what he said. One of the wonderful things about internet too is just all of the fabulous collaboration, and not just within the in common working groups, but also just when you go to a conference or when you're even communicating on one of the, like the participants mailing list or one of the other lists, if you have a question or a problem, others are all quick to help and offer suggestions, and if even if that falls flat, the in-common staff is always there to help and do what they can. And so when this whole, what was then called TIER program, came along a few years back, and they were looking for TIER investing schools, Illinois, I'm happy to say, was one of the schools that invested in the startup of TIER. We believed in it. We believed in what it was trying to accomplish. We used a couple of its products, and we really wanted to stand behind it and help it to succeed. So we were already working with the TIER, or now Trusted Access Platform, tools. And then I remember Ann West pulling me aside after a conference and telling me, we're going to do this early adopter thing. Would you guys be interested? And I had seen the success from the Net Plus program with the Net Plus early adopters providing feedback to various in-common Net Plus vendors. And I thought, hey, this is going to be fantastic, because it's going to help to drive this and give us some direct input and help us to implement things faster. So just as the CSP was spinning up, we were beginning a cloud first initiative here at Illinois to move as many of our services into the cloud as possible. We already had Shibboleth. We were in the process of implementing Grouper. And so Shibboleth was going to be moving to the cloud, and Grouper was originally going to be deployed on campus and then moved to the cloud, but we actually just ended up going straight to the cloud with it from the get-go. So all of these things aligned perfectly for us. It was sort of a no-brainer for us. Let's apply for the CSP. We've got things that align with what this program is trying to accomplish. So that's what got us there, just helping us to accomplish our goals faster and better, and at the same time have a chance to provide some input and feedback back to the packaging and the further development of the Trusted Access Platform. So, Lacey.
So for us, we actually were not very aware of the other TAP components when we first joined the CSP. We had been using Shibboleth and kind of thought that was the extent of it. And we were slightly familiar with Grouper, but I don't think that any of us really kind of realized the connection there. So we were researching various systems that could serve as our registry for our iAM system, and looking at schemas that we could implement, and just kind of stumbled across co-manage. And then in researching that more, realized that InCommon did have this other suite of tools. So that was kind of how we just sort of found it online, actually. I don't know how we didn't know, but we didn't. So as we were looking at the different components, we were originally kind of looking at co-manage or something that could be used for a guest system. And I think our campus just wasn't quite ready to implement that yet. And we also learned more about Grouper in the process, and kind of decided to focus on Grouper for the CSP that we did last year. And that's kind of how we found it.
Yeah, so for us, kind of similar. Our attraction to the CSP program primarily was the software. So the CSP really opened our eyes to the viability of open source products. So at our campus, we tend to be a purchase and implement type of campus. We don't have a strong development team. So open source was something that was rather new to us. And CSP really made us realize that there was real potential, even for a campus like ours, to adopt open source options. We really like the idea of modular and purpose-driven products. And so the fact that these are targeted products with targeted solutions really appeal to us over adopting commercial products that attempt to do a whole lot of things at the same time, and perhaps a lot more difficult and time consuming and certainly expensive to implement. So just the idea of co-manage as the person registry, grouper for access control, and then perhaps midpoint for provisioning, and implementing those individually, separately on schedules that would meet our needs seems very appealing. So we definitely were interested in participating with the CSP program to learn more about how to do that. The next thing I would say is the focus on integrating each of those components. So there's a big effort within the Internet 2 community in getting those TAP components to work together, and really trying to understand what the common design patterns are among other universities was another big interest for SMU. We're looking for ways to standardize the way that these products are used and integrated so that we won't be perhaps all that different from what other campuses are doing. And finally, I would say that it was the knowledge that we had gained from previous experience with Internet 2 that we would have lots of subject matter experts available for informal conversations, and just having those discussions and sharing experiences, and perhaps finding an opportunity for us to contribute in areas where we had a little bit to offer. All of those things are great opportunities as part of the CSP.
Great, thanks everybody. So the next question I wanted to ask was, for you, if you could tell us a little bit about your project work that you tackled or worked on during the CSP.
So Illinois, like I said, had Shibboleth already running. We've been running it for years and years on-prem since version 1 of the IDP 1.3, which I inherited from Mike Grady, and that's when I started learning XML. That seems like a lifetime ago at this point. And we had started deploying Grouper on-prem, started playing with it. But our goals in the CSP was to get both of those fully deployed and implemented in the cloud, in AWS, originally on Elastic Beanstalk, but Amazon being a moving target, we moved to Amazon Fargate before we actually got around to deploying it, which was a good thing. Fargate is superior to Elastic Beanstalk in a number of ways. So we set out with those goals in mind. That was the technical piece. That was the software piece. Little did we know, Aaron mentioned at the beginning of the call, the friendship building, the relationship building, and the connections we'd make in the process. And that was a huge part of it. I still feel a certain sense of camaraderie with the people that were in that inaugural CSP group with us, and even somewhat with some of the folks in later groups who we helped out as alums. Got to share some of our experiences and help them with some of our problems. By far, the most valuable part of the CSP to us was being able to work through problems with peers from other institutions. My favorite example, although now because the solution was so obvious that we missed it, so now it seems somewhat trivial, but one of our issues with moving Shibboleth into AWS was the directory that we pulled attributes from was an old IBM LDAP server that we weren't going to be moving into AWS. It was only accessible from on campus. We wanted to use Active Directory, but the problem was we had certain attributes, such as names, that were concealed for users who are FERPA suppressed. And the way we did that, since we couldn't really go mucking with the schema in Active Directory on these core attributes, was just to stick the user's user ID. So if you were Jay Smith, Your name might have been John Smith, but your first name would be J. Smith, and your last name would be J. Smith, and everything else that was supposed to be concealed would probably be J. Smith too. And that wasn't going to work so well when Shibboleth needed to have access to the real information for certain applications that did have permission to see this purpose suppressed data. And I remember on a call, Andy Morgan from Oregon State suggested, why don't you just set up another set of what we then ended up calling shadow attributes that were a duplicate copy of the real attributes under different names, except for when users were purpose suppressed. It would be the real data. And then we could change the schema on those to protect the access to them so they wouldn't just be generally available. It was so obvious, we should have thought of it, but we didn't. We kind of scratched our heads and thought, well, that makes sense. And it's just, I could probably name a dozen other examples of things, maybe many less obvious than that we got from CSP peers or from the SMEs, because that's the other beauty of the CSP, is being able to work with the SMEs and get assistance directly from the people who have the expertise with these tools. In many cases, the lead developers or folks who have had significant development experience with them or significant usage experience with them. We had a lot to learn about Grouper. There was a lot of ramping up to do with Grouper, and it would have probably taken us 5 to 10 times as long had we not been able to just go directly to the SMEs or to our peers that were already running Grouper to get help. So that was sort of the secret sauce of the CSP for us, and why things came together so quickly. I should put in a disclaimer that even though we were in the first CSP class, our Shibboleth IDP did not go to AWS until about 3 months ago. It was a 5-year project. There were a lot of complicating factors and a lot of internal direction that was slightly different, mainly dealing with the AWS pieces, which the CSP didn't directly address. But we did get some AWS help even after our CSP official program ended from other schools that were in the program with us. And yeah, it was a happy day when we celebrated that victory after 5 years. So, Lacey?
So for us, we ended up, like I mentioned before, implementing Grouper. And we used the CSP to fully implement it in production rather than kind of evaluate the different tab components. We decided to just focus on Grouper. It seemed like it was going to be, you know, the I don't want to say simplest, but the fastest one for us to implement, since we didn't have a registry yet or anything to support co-manage. So, and our guest management was being done with our provisioning system, which is ForgeRock. It's a vendor solution, and it just wasn't really doing a very good job with that. So we decided to focus on Grouper. And I think, kind of to what Keith said, some of the biggest takeaways were the subject matter experts being able to just ask Chris Heiser whenever there was a Grouper specific question, and what they were doing and seeing what other schools were doing was very helpful to get it up and running quickly. And the Slack channels still are very helpful. Even after the CSP is completed, we still have access to all these different technical resources, which is really helpful. So yeah, we mostly just focused on getting Grouper out the door, and we're going to hopefully work on Midpoint next, which be a whole nother project in and of itself. So that's my main thing.
Yeah, and for SMU, our involvement with CSP was perhaps more modest. Rather than making progress on any implementations, our objective really was to just learn about the TAP components and to understand whether they would be a good fit at SMU, and to develop a reference architecture to sort of depict how we thought the solutions would tie together. And finally, kind of a roadmap to work on the sequence of which of the products we would work on first and what would come next. So that was quite a bit of effort for us, and participating in this CSP and having others who had experience with the products and also experts that we could talk to about the products was extremely helpful. So while we were going through those exercises, we identified new opportunities and challenges that were coming. The biggest example of that was we learned that our continuing education group had students that would participate in continuing education classes that were never serviced by our identity and access management program. So these were students with their own SIS system, and that system was never leveraged as part of identity and access management strategies. And so we did no SSO or provisioning for them at all. And as their program began to grow and they needed access to more than just one system, SSO became very important for them and continues to be very important. So that was an opportunity for us to focus on solutions that we could bring to bear in that use case. And we really saw it as a unique opportunity to have almost what we considered a greenfield implementation. Because this was an environment that we had never had involvement with, it was essentially like starting with a fresh slate. So our plan that we're sort of in phase one with at this point was developed as part of the CSP. And that essentially is to use co-manage to leverage that SIS system to bring in identities that will mint identifiers for, and co-manage will provide the identifiers back to the SIS system. And we'll also use co-manage to provision those identities into an open LDAP instance and use a Shibboleth IDP to offer SSO with that open LDAP instance as the attribute store and authentication store. So that was a big win for us that we definitely attribute to the CSP. Another thing that I would say that CSP really helped us with is to understand the viability and market penetration for the open source products. Those are things that when we hear from commercial providers that want to market their solutions to us, they lead with that information in their opening slide. So I'm sure everyone is familiar with that. But in the open source realm, there's really not the equivalent sort of sales pitch. So we don't really hear about the viability of the product or the market penetration. So those are things that we were able to bring up as part of the CSP, and Internet 2 took notice of that request and has really taken off with it. So I think we'll hear more about that in the coming months. So I would say in summary that the collaboration that we experienced in CSP really helped us to sort of hone in on what our objectives for our phase one implementations should be, and sort of lay a foundation for a roadmap for what the future project schedule might involve.
Awesome. Thanks, Tommy, Lacey, and Keith. I don't see any questions from the audience yet. I will keep my eye on that, but we'll keep going. And our next question is, tell us a little bit about what's next for your iAM team.
We've either put them to sleep or we're just doing such a great job covering everything that they can't think of anything to ask. I'm going with number 2. So Shibboleth is out there now. Hooray. Grouper's out there now under the fun name of Authman, or Authorization Manager. Picture your favorite superhero. And we are having lots of fun adding things into Grouper now. And we have a lot of smart IT professionals on this campus. And when it comes to a platform or a framework like Grouper, it's very much, and if you build it, they will come. If you deploy it, they will come, I should say. We deployed Grouper, and as people are learning about this cool thing called Authman, they are getting into it, they are learning about it, and they're thinking, hey, I could use this for X, Y, and Z. We never even thought of X, Y, and Z for potential uses. Many of you have heard of our Safer Illinois app, which has helped us over the last year to resume in-person instruction. You might have attended the iAM online that we did about that last year. There are a number of groups in Grouper that manage access and administration and rights to very important and very sensitive parts of managing that framework. And it would have been much more difficult without Grouper manually managing Active Directory groups to do that, simply because we can deploy some of the neat features of Grouper for doing group logic, group arithmetic, adding and subtracting, and having nested groups that really aren't nested. So that has been huge, and we're continuing to leverage that. We're also in the process of moving our class rosters into Grouper. Hopefully this fall, we're going to start to push those out. We have literally thousands of groups in Active Directory, as I'm sure many of you do, representing each of our courses and each of our sections. We actually have a multi-valued attribute for those section groups that indicates each undergrad student or each grad student. And enter COVID, we discovered when we started having online sections with more than 1,200 students in a given section that would have never fit in person in any place on our campus except for maybe the football stadium or the basketball arena. We discovered that Active Directory doesn't like having a multi-valued attribute with more than slightly over 1,200 values. So we started having some problems getting groups pushed out for just a handful of sections, and we had to put some manual workarounds in place to make that work. Grouper is going to make that all better because we're re-architecting the entire class roster framework. We're going to be able to push it out in a more real-time fashion, and it's going to be much prettier than what we had. What we had has done us great for years. Grouper is going to do us even better on that one. So that, and I'm sure many other Grouper projects, like I said, that are even beyond our wildest imagination with the things that our IT pros on campus will come up with. We're also still in the process of moving other things into the cloud. Not necessarily trusted access platform components, since we have the two that we're already using out there, but our central person registry, a number of applications that we run, moving out there, all into the cloud, some containerized, some just on an EC2 instance, depending on the nature of the beast. So that's keeping us busy these days. But then back to trusted access platform pieces, we are still using an IBM product for our central person registry, even though we got rid of that LDAP that I was mentioning earlier. And that's costing us a lot more money than Midpoint would cost. And there's some really neat things in Midpoint that we could be leveraging, things that we got to see a little more up close and personal because of our involvement with the CSP, and a chance to see what the various components can do. Because when you're in the CSP, even if you're not using one of those components, you still have a chance to be exposed to the demos and information on the roadmaps. And there are some pieces in there that could really benefit us, that align really nicely with the higher ed community, and that would save us a bundle of money. And I also have talked with a couple of my teammates about co-manage eventually too, if we're just going to go whole hog with the CSP and using it to replace some pieces of our affiliate and guest systems right now, which are working fine. They were developed in-house, and they're working fine, but there is probably a lot more that could be done with a lot less in-house software management if we looked at something like co-manage. And because we have the sandbox or the workbench to play with, it's super easy to demo those things to our peers and say, hey, I know we got this, but look, I've already got a co-manage instance up and running here in the workbench. Let me show you what we can do with this. So that's a major plug for the Trusted Access Platform workbench right there. So that's kind of what's ahead and what Keith Wessel hopes is ahead for our iAM goals.
I think that we're very similar as far as our grouper implementation to what Keith said. As soon as we stood it up, we were thinking we're going to roll it out slowly and see how things perform and just kind of keep an eye on things. And immediately there were lots of people wanting to move their app policies to grouper, server admin team wanting to move things in. So it definitely took off a lot faster than I was expecting, which is good. And it's also good to have the CSP kind of as still a support line if needed, because it has been very successful so far. And there's still a lot of things that we need to build into Grouper. And I think I mentioned the registry system. We're still sort of flushing that out, thinking data from our ERP system, which is Banner, into a registry that Grouper will basically look at instead of pulling loaders from Banner. It'll have all of the data in its registry, and hopefully the loading of groups will go much faster that way. We can build custom views easier. So that's kind of our immediate goal for Grouper. And then we have another very massive project coming down the line that we may re-engage the CSP for, actually, because it's going to end up changing a lot of our iAM products. Almost every piece of our iAM suite would be touched by this project. So, and it's very new. So we're actually considering rejoining the CSP this year. We'll see how that goes. And I think, the co-managed piece is still kind of lingering. I don't know if we'll have time to look at it this year or if it'll be kind of down the road. But eventually we do need to get our guest system managed better. And we still are on premise, mostly entirely on premise. And containers are a little more tricky when you're on prem, especially the orchestration piece. So currently we don't have a very fleshed out orchestration, and that's definitely a big goal. But yeah, we have lots of things coming up. Tommy?
Yeah, kind of similar. I would say that next up for us will be to begin making progress on all of those great plans that we developed during the CSP. So the roadmap and the reference architecture are going to sort of map the path forward for us. But we've got a lot of work to get started on that. Like Lacey mentioned, we have a lot of work to do on coming up to speed on support for containers. So pretty new to our infrastructure team. So currently we're sort of managing, but not really excelling at that. So speaking of maturity level, we're definitely coming up to speed on maturing our support for containerization. So definitely good to point out here that all of the TAP components are issued as containers. So ability to run containers in your environment is definitely a requirement for running those TAP components. So in our case, we are still very heavily based on our data center. We've got a new, relatively new, expensive data center that's running on our campus that we're very happy with and proud of. And so we're leveraging that much more so than we are cloud infrastructure at this point. So using Grouper for creating meaningful cohorts is going to be probably one of the next big steps for us. We have not yet gotten started with Grouper. So we have a non-production instance of it running, and having it integrate with our ERP and creating groups that will be meaningful for use with access control decisions will definitely be in our near future. We're still trying to make a decision on a provisioning engine. So Midpoint is definitely in the contention there, but there are one or two commercial products that are still under consideration. So we've got to arrive at a decision on that. So I think that decision will probably be made sometime this summer. And after that, I think we'll be looking for, we got some good advice during the CSP to look for almost like an MVP, a minimal viable product, something that we can be very targeted with and use these products to be successful. So something somewhat small and targeted that we have a good idea we can use co-manage, Grouper, and Midpoint to do. So to finally show the value of our work in a meaningful way, but without trying to bite off too much. So that again goes back to our roadmap, and we're kind of trying to select what that provisioning target might be so that we can demonstrate success. So yeah, I think those are the next steps at SMU.
Awesome. We do have two questions. I'm going to actually ask the second one first because it's specific for Tommy. But it says, Krishan is asking on when you mentioned about cloud to on-prem, are you moving to an on-prem strategy, moving away from the cloud, or what's going on?
Okay, I may have misspoken there. We do not currently have cloud infrastructure. So it's something that's under consideration for us. We're working with a partner, as a matter of fact, to get started, but we don't have any infrastructure in the cloud at this point. So a lot of that is due to just the fact that we have this new shiny, expensive data center that we're running our infrastructure from today. So that sort of makes it somewhat difficult to sell to the executives of the university that, hey, we also want to move to the cloud. But I think concern about that is sort of dissipating, and we do have a plan now to establish some cloud infrastructure. But for the time being, everything is in our on-prem data center.
Thank you. It's so Mona asked the question of the panelists, what are your criteria for maturity level 5, number one? And do you have a roadmap to get to maturity level 5? And if so, what is the timeline and how do you keep it updated based on the new incoming technologies? So what is a 5 and how are you going to get there?
That's a great question. In fact, when I asked my team this morning to help evaluate our maturity level, they said both what is a 5 and what is a 1. One of my teammates jokingly said a 5. Does that mean like I have a mortgage and 2 kids and a car and a dog, and so I mean I'm having a hard enough time imagining getting past a 4, but in my mind, a 5 would be to have our services, at least for us, fully in the cloud, have a rich set of groups and self-service tools and everything running out of Grouper, so that our IT pros, unless they run into a major snag, can help themselves. And like I said, being off of the IBM product and onto a better, richer person registry, and just in a more self-sustaining, self-maintaining state, which for the software versions, containerizing can help to do that. It makes upgrades and patches much easier. But then for the actual data pieces, you need to have the right software in place that can be self-sustaining and self-maintaining. And we're still a ways from that. We have quite the list of business practices we'd like to address, of processes we'd like to address. And we're also pretty much non-existent when it comes to IAM governance, and that's a big piece that we would like to have more of. If you want to look at a less technical piece for our IAM, that would be closer to a 5 in my mind. I'll let these two answer their thoughts.
Yeah, actually, I didn't really know what to put for that because I kind of had the same questions. What does a 5 look like? Is it different for each campus? I mean, obviously, we'll probably never be fully in the cloud, so that's maybe not achievable, at least anytime soon. But I do come back to, I think it was Tom Barton in one of the base camp sessions that I went to a couple of years ago, or gosh, yeah, maybe about 2 years ago. He said that like you reach full maturity when a person doesn't really need to be onboarded, or when the onboarding automatically includes all the access privileges that they need and flows, to all the downstream systems with very little intervention. And, for us, we're not there yet, but that would be pretty sweet to get there.
I agree. I would say that to say that you've achieved level 5, you have to be able to say that you're meeting the demands of the business, and doing so in a streamlined way that is easy to sustain and maintain. For us, I think we're still trying to fund additional personnel for our program. So that's definitely been a big challenge for us. And possibly even elevating the identity and access management team to higher levels at the university organizationally, perhaps reporting directly to the CIO. These are things that have been discussed that I think will go a long way toward moving our maturity level up.
Awesome, thank you. I'm gonna add, we got one more question in the chat window, and then we have about 8 minutes left. So we'll kind of start wrapping up here in the next couple minutes. But somebody is wondering, what options or recommendations do you all have for incorporating multi-factor?
So for us, we did that at the IDP. So we used Duo, and we integrated it with the IDP. And so now that essentially means that for any SSO service, we have the option to require a Duo logon. So that saved us a lot of hassle, because the alternative would have been perhaps integrating Duo with each individual application. So I think this was a big win for us.
Yeah, we are doing pretty much the same thing. We have Duo and Shibboleth at the IDP level. We actually are in the process of refactoring the way that works a little bit to, because of the new refeds multi-factor, I guess, requirement that's coming down from the NIH, the way that we have it kind of shoehorned in front of every request, based on a group that you're in, it isn't going to, I think, meet those needs. So we're kind of reevaluating that, but currently we do have Duo at the IDP level. I think that the refeds implementation might be a little bit different for campuses, but everyone may have it. Maybe people are already asserting that. I don't know.
Here at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, our slogan is, if it's easy to do, then complicate it. And we've done a nice job of that with MFA. We do have a nice and maturing Duo implementation, again, just like the other two. However, we have multiple SSO systems. Many of you have heard me on my soapbox about that. And we have a custom iframe instead of using the Duo provided iframe, which many of you know the future of the Duo iframe is going to be somewhat short-lived in the next couple of years as things change to their full frame support. So all of that said, we are using Duo. We have it implemented in several different ways. And we are in the process now of trying to simplify the single sign-on experience for users, linking some SSO systems together so users actually see few of them, honoring Duo session regardless of which SSO system you use to get to that Duo prompt. If you say, remember me for 24 hours, it'll remember you for 24 hours, no matter how you got there. So I don't have good answers to this other than listen to what the other two said and try and keep it simple.
Thank you, Keith. Okay, so I'm going to keep on going here so we can end on time today. It's so certainly we've offered a lot of different ways that you can connect with our community. And we talked a lot about the CSP specifically. So if you're interested in hearing more about this program, there's a link here, and I can take that in just a moment and drop it into the chat window, or if maybe one of the other panelists can copy that would be super. If you're interested, there is a really brief survey link that you can complete. It will take you all of about a minute to complete. And what that will do is just trigger us to let us know that you'd like to set up a call, and I'll reach out and set up some time with you. There's certainly no commitment to doing that. And then what we would do then is we would actually sit down, talk about your interest in the program, answer any questions you had. If you decided that it was right for you, we could send you a link to the program and continue from there. And we also mentioned Basecamp as kind of, I think that was the first place I met both Lacey and Tommy as an example. That's coming up July 12th and 16th. Registration's still open. It's a really great event. I think my favorite quote from it last year was somebody was saying, I found my people here. And again, it was all about kind of the community and learning and giving back. So again, here's the registration link, and we'll be meeting half days that week, and we'd love to see you all there. And thank you all for attending this week's iAM Online. We strive to do this month, I'm sorry. We strive to continue to give you timely topics and to, execute it well. And we would love your feedback. Here's a brief link, and you can go there and tell us what you thought about today or ideas for the future. And thank you all so much for being here. We'll be putting the link to this recording online in case you loved it so much you'd like to come back and revisit it again, or possibly share it with a colleague who wasn't here. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.